Software has always had vulnerabilities. Every browser you've ever opened, every operating system you've ever booted, every app on your phone is riddled with vulnerabilities that nobody could find fast enough to fix. But yesterday, someone found 271 of them in a single browser in one pass before it even shipped. And then within hours, someone broke into that system that found them. Mozilla disclosed yesterday that Anthropic's Claude Mythos preview identified 271 security vulnerabilities in Firefox 150's unreleased source code. 1 month ago, Opus 4.6, the previous best model, had found 22 bugs in Firefox 148. Now, 14 of those were rated high severity, and that was already impressive. Mythos found more than 12 times that number in the next version. Same code-based lineage, same type of analysis. 12-fold improvement in 30 days. Firefox CTO compared what Mythos did to the work of elite security researchers, the kind of people organizations spend months recruiting and millions retaining. Mythos analyzed categories of bugs that automated fuzzing, the industry standard technique for finding software flaws, physically cannot reach. And it worked fast enough that Mozilla patched all 271 vulnerabilities before Firefox 150 shipped to a single user. Now, you might be thinking, okay, one AI found bugs in one browser. Interesting, but how much does that really change? Well, it changes the fundamental math of software defense. Now, think about it like this. Imagine your house has been slowly accumulating termite damage for 30 years, and every inspector you've ever hired could only check one wall per visit. You knew the damage was there, you just couldn't find it all before it spread. Mythos is the inspector that checks every wall, every joist, every beam in a single visit. The damage was always that extensive. The instrument finally matches the scale of the problem. Hawley used a phrase that I want you to really hold on to here. Rounded the curve. He's saying software security, for its entire history, has been a losing race. Defenders could reduce the attack surface but never claim to have mapped it completely, because human auditors working at human speed against code bases growing at industrial speed could never close that gap. The ratio was structurally unfavorable. But what 271 vulnerabilities in a single pass means is that the discovery speed has overtaken the accumulation speed. For the first time, the instrument can move through a code base faster than new vulnerabilities pile up in it. That makes the problem finite. Not easy, simply finite. There's an end point, and that's a word that has never honestly applied to cybersecurity before. Hawley reported that engineering leaders at very large companies are already pulling thousands of engineers off other projects for 6-month security sprints to work through AI-assisted audits of their own code bases. Mozilla's other CTO, Rafi Krikorian, flagged the gap this creates. Open-sourced software, maintained by volunteers, the infrastructure that underpins much of the internet, needs the same audit but has no budget for the engineering response. The capability to find the problems exists now. The capacity to fix them doesn't distribute evenly. That's a real tension, and it's one that also applies to societal structure, as we've said earlier on the Century Report, that the big banks with the resources are the ones able to actually deploy Mythos, while the vulnerable local utility or hospital cannot. That is a real tension, but it's also a bounded one, because a problem you can see and name is still categorically different from one that you can't. But then, on the same day, Anthropic confirmed it's investigating unauthorized access to Mythos Preview through a third-party contractor's credentials. Bloomberg reported that a small group of users in a private forum got in through a vendor's compromised account. Anthropic said its own systems weren't breached. The entry point was a contractor environment. The group reportedly used the model for exploratory purposes, not cybersecurity prompts, but the fact remains. Project Glasswing, the carefully designed staggered release architecture that we've been covering, was breached within hours of distributing Mythos to its initial partners. This is the structural tension that has defined the Mythos arc from day one. The model's capability is real enough to transform how we defend software, and the containment architecture designed to distribute that capability responsibly leaked on its first day. Logan Graham, Anthropic's offensive cyber lead, estimated in April that Mythos-class capability would be broadly distributed within 6 to 12 months. Yesterday suggests the lower bound of that estimate might be generous. I want to look at both of these facts at the same time, without resolving the tension necessarily, because The tension is the story. 271 vulnerabilities patched before they could be exploited. That's an unambiguous win for every Firefox user on the planet. Unauthorized access to the system that found them, however, that's a governance architecture being tested by the physics of information flow. Both of those things are true. Both of those things were reported on the same day, and the response to both, Mozilla hardening its browser, Anthropic investigating the breach, the security community racing to audit other codebases, is generating the norms and the protocols of the intelligence era right now through friction, not really design documents. All right, let's shift away because the political ground underneath all of it moved. Yesterday, the administration told CNBC it had, quote, very good talks with Anthropic and that the company, quote, can be of great use. 6 weeks ago, the Pentagon had designated Anthropic a supply chain risk. 6 weeks. That's the interval between blacklisting a company in the worst possible way and now publicly courting it. The variable that flipped the calculation was Mythos itself. When the Federal Reserve, the Bank of England, the ECB, the IMF, and now Australia's ASIC, regulators across 4 continents, as we covered just the other day, treat a single intelligence system as a standing governance priority, exclusion becomes more expensive than engagement. The Century Report tracked this shift through the Treasury Secretaries convening bank CEOs on April 10th, the Amadei-Wiles meeting at the White House on April 18th, and the NSA deploying Mythos through Project Glasswing even while the Pentagon's ban was technically active. Yesterday's public statement completed the reversal at the entire level. Sam Altman, meanwhile, over at OpenAI, compared Mythos to building a bomb while also selling a bomb shelter for $100 million. That framing tells you something about the competitive pressure running through every governance decision in frontier AI right now. The 2 largest labs hold genuinely different theories about how to distribute dangerous capability, and each is describing the other's approach in language designed to undermine its credibility. What's actually happening underneath all that rhetoric is even messier and also more interesting. The friction between them is producing governance architecture faster than any deliberate institutional process could. Adversarial, contradictory, and accelerating. And also generating real norms through collision rather than consensus. Okay, let's shift away again. Completely different domain, but the same week. This is going to land a little differently. Meta began installing software on U.S. employees' computers yesterday that captures keystrokes, mouse movements, clicks, and periodic screenshots. The purpose is not what you think. It's not just employee monitoring. It's generating training data for AI agents that can perform work tasks autonomously. CTO Andrew Bosworth's internal memo states the vision explicitly. Agents that primarily do the work, he said, with humans shifting to direct, review, and help them improve. Every time a human corrects an AI output, that correction becomes training data that reduces the need for future human correction. This is human reinforcement loop, but it's applied at the actual work level. I need you to feel the distinction between this and every prior version of this story. The Century Report covered Chinese tech workers being told to document their own workflows on April 20th, just 2 days ago. Those workers at least chose what to record, what to emphasize, what to omit, what to frame as routine versus judgment. Some even built sabotage tools to corrupt the documentation. They had authorship over what got extracted. Meta's approach eliminates that layer entirely. The software captures behavior workers generate involuntarily. The pauses, the corrections, the moments of rethinking, the hesitations that constitute the texture of skilled work. This isn't knowledge extraction, it's behavior extraction. And the difference is important because behavior carries information the worker never chose to share and may not even know they possess. Now, the timing makes it sharper. Meta plans to lay off approximately 10% of its global workforce starting May 20th. So the company is simultaneously recording how its employees work and preparing to eliminate a significant fraction of them. The data being captured from the workers who remain will train the systems designed to determine whether those roles continue to even exist. European labor law would almost certainly block this. Italy bars electronic monitoring of employee productivity, period. Germany permits keystroke logging only under suspicion of serious criminal offense. In the United States, no federal limit on worker surveillance even exists. The most aggressive forms of AI training data collection are concentrated in the jurisdiction with the weakest worker protections: China and the United States. And the response architecture matters. The Chinese sabotage counter project got 5 million likes on the video of how it works because workers had something to resist with. Passive behavioral capture offers no equivalent surface for pushback, though. The displacement production dynamic has reached a stage in America where producing replacement enabling data requires no worker cooperation at all. Okay, let's shift again from the digital infrastructure to the physical one, because the energy story that arrived yesterday describes the same transition under pressure from both directions. A federal judge ordered the administration to lift its blockade on new wind and solar projects, finding the actions, quote, arbitrary and capricious. The ruling restores projects representing 57 gigawatts of capacity, over $905 million in sunk investment that was at risk of being stranded. The judge struck down 5 separate administrative actions, including a requirement that the Interior Secretary personally review every decision related to wind and solar development. That's like requiring a CEO of a hospital to personally approve every prescription, and they certainly weren't applying it to fossil fuels. It's a structural blockade dressed as oversight. And this is the latest in a pattern. Courts have struck down attempts to halt offshore wind construction, freeze EV charger funding, and cancel state-level clean energy grants. The legal risk is migrating. It now sits more heavily on the entities trying to slow renewable deployment than on the developers building it, and that is a huge shift. Each ruling narrows the administrative surface available for future obstruction. The judicial system is functioning as something of a ratchet, permitting advances that can be paused but not permanently reversed through executive action alone. And on the same day, NERC, the organization responsible for bulk power system reliability, disclosed it's preparing a Level 3 Essential Actions Alert. That's its most serious tier. Now the trigger. Multiple incidents where data center loads unexpectedly disconnected from the grid, dropping 1,000 megawatts or more from the power system. That's the output of a large power plant, that 1,000 megawatts, vanishing from the grid without warning. NERC found these sudden disconnections, quote, can impact the bulk power system's ability to maintain frequency, regulate transmission voltage, and otherwise maintain stability. Close that quote. Translation: the grid wasn't designed for loads that can disappear at this scale and speed. So the picture is 57 gigawatts of clean energy unblocked by a court. Grid operators scrambling because the demand side, data centers running the intelligence systems that we've all been talking about this whole episode, is behaving in a way the infrastructure can't absorb. The supply and the demand are both arriving faster than the engineering frameworks designed to connect them. And a triple-junction perovskite-on-silicon solar cell, published in Nature by Anthropic et al., just exceeded 30% efficiency for the first time, pushing well past the practical ceiling of conventional silicon panels. Combined with Jinko Solar's 32.76% efficiency on industrial substrates and the autonomous perovskite discovery system that we published back on April 15th here on Century Report, you're looking at 3 separate results forming a feedback loop. Material science produces candidates, manufacturing engineering proves they work at production scale, and AI-assisted discovery compresses the search for the next one. Each leg accelerates the others. The ceiling for solar electricity is rising rapidly, while the timeline to reach it is shrinking. And both motions are now partially automated. Okay, just one release to cover from yesterday. Brex released CrabTrap, which is an open source HTTP proxy that uses an AI judge to secure agent traffic while it's in production. So if you're running AI agents that make real API calls with real consequences, CrabTrap kind of sits between the agent and the outside world and evaluates whether each request should go through. So think of it as a bouncer for autonomous systems. Here's what I'm holding today. 271 vulnerabilities found. A containment wall breached. A political reversal completed in just 6 weeks. Workers' keystrokes captured without their participation. 57 gigawatts restored by a judge. A grid shaking under loads it was never designed to carry. A solar cell crossing a threshold that silicon never could. Now very soon, watch for how Mozilla's audit process scales to open source projects that don't have Mozilla's engineering budget, because the vulnerability surface that Mythos revealed exists in every code base, and the ones maintained by volunteers are the ones that hold up the internet. Watch for the first European regulatory response to Meta's behavioral capture program, because the Atlantic gap in worker surveillance law is about to become very visible. And pay attention to the NERC's Level 3 alert when it formally is issued, because the engineering standards written into that document will define how the physical grid adapts to loads that think, compute, and occasionally vanish without warning. The software was always this vulnerable. The grid was always this fragile. The workers were always this exposed. What changes now is the speed at which all of it becomes visible. And visible problems, unlike invisible ones, have endpoints. We'll see you tomorrow.